The Galactic Conclave had ruled over 10,000 star systems for almost 500,000 years. Their power was absolute. Their word was law. No species had ever challenged them. No civilization had ever defied their judgment. So when the 17 members of the High Council voted to exile Earth from galactic civilization, humanity had no way to fight back. Not yet. Admiral Grace Sullivan stood alone on the observation deck of the orbital station called Horizon Watch. Her hands were clasped behind her back as she watched the alien fleet begin to leave. 3,000 warships had surrounded Earth for the past 3 days. Each vessel was large enough to destroy an entire continent with a single shot. They had come to deliver a message, and now that message had been received. The Arbiter, the leader of the Conclave, had spoken to every human being on the planet at the same time. Its voice had come through every television, every radio, every phone, every computer screen. Humanity has broken 17 laws of the Galactic Preservation Accord, the Arbiter had announced. Your species is dangerous. You create new technologies without asking permission. You build weapons that we have not approved. You have sent ships beyond the boundaries we set for you. You refuse to let us change your genetic code to make you more peaceful. For these crimes, Earth is now exiled from all galactic civilization. You may not travel beyond your own star system. Any ship that tries to cross the boundary will be destroyed. Any attempt to contact other species will be blocked. From this moment forward, you are completely alone. Before leaving, the alien fleet activated a massive energy barrier at the edge of the solar system. The barrier surrounded everything, from the sun to the most distant rocks in the outer regions of space. It was a prison wall made of exotic particles and pure energy. Anything that touched it would be instantly vaporized. That night, President Howard Mitchell spoke to the world from the United Nations, building in New York. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. But those who knew him well could see the anger burning beneath his steady expression. They have called us criminals, the president said, his voice carrying across the globe. Our crime was being curious. Our crime was wanting to explore. Our crime was refusing to let them change our children into something less than human. They have locked us inside our own home because we dared to look up at the stars and wonder what was out there. He paused and took a deep breath. When he spoke again, his voice was harder. They have made a terrible mistake. In secret laboratories, hidden beneath mountains and under oceans, scientists who had spent years studying stolen alien technology began working with a new sense of purpose. In military bases that did not officially exist, engineers pulled out projects that had been considered too dangerous, too ambitious, too impossible. All across the world, humanity began to prepare. Dr. Catherine Ellis was the best physicist on Earth. She ran the Geneva Advanced Research Center, a facility buried deep underground where the most secret experiments took place. She gathered her team in a bunker that would become their home for the next several years. The barrier around our solar system is powered by generators on the other side, she explained, pointing at glowing images floating in the air. We cannot break through it with normal methods. The amount of energy needed would be greater than our sun produces. Colonel Nathan Brooks stood beside her. He was the military officer assigned to protect her project and help her team get whatever they needed. He was a practical man who believed that every problem had a solution if you looked hard enough. Then we need to find another way, Nathan said. We have the plans we captured from the Vexry incident 3 years ago. We have the research on dimensional travel that the Conclave ordered us to destroy. The research we forgot to delete, Catherine said with a small smile. Exactly. So here is my question. Can we build a ship that does not travel through normal space? Can we build something that goes around the barrier by moving through other dimensions? Catherine looked at her team. They were already exhausted from the chaos of the past few days. but she could see the determination in their eyes. They were scared, yes, but they were also angry. And angry humans had a long history of doing impossible things. "We have no choice but to try," she said, while the scientists worked in their underground facilities. The rest of humanity tried to adjust to life inside the cage. Some people fell into despair. They believed that the exile meant the end of everything, that humanity would slowly fade away, trapped forever in one small corner of the universe. But most people did not give up. Factories that had built cars and planes started building spacecraft. Universities that had studied art and literature started teaching physics and engineering. Children who had dreamed of becoming singers or athletes started dreaming of becoming pilots and soldiers. The anger that had ignited on the day of exile never went away. It simply changed. It became focused. It became patient. It became dangerous. In her small apartment in Chicago, a young woman named Sarah watched the stars through her window every night. She was only 19 years old, studying to become a doctor. But after the exile, she changed her plans. She applied to the new military academy that the government had opened. She wanted to fly ships. She wanted to fight. "They think they have beaten us," she wrote in her journal. "They think we will accept our prison and stay quiet. They do not understand what they have done. They have given 8 billion people a common enemy. They have united us in a way that nothing else ever could. And one day, they will regret it." President Mitchell met with his advisors every day to review the progress of the secret projects. The news was often frustrating. Experiments failed. Ships exploded. Brave volunteers died testing technologies that did not work. But every failure taught them something new. Every death brought them one step closer to freedom. "How long?" the president asked during one late-night meeting. 5 years, Dr. Ellis reported through a secure video link. "Maybe 7. We need time to get it right. If we rush, we will fail." "Then take the time you need," the president said. "But never forget why we are doing this." They thought they could cage humanity. They thought they could break our spirit. We are going to prove them wrong. Outside the window of the White House, the stars shone bright and cold in the night sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the invisible barrier, the Galactic Conclave was already celebrating. They believed that the human problem had been solved. They believed that Earth would never trouble them again. They were wrong. 5 years passed after the exile began. The outside galaxy heard nothing from Earth. No signals escaped the barrier. No ships attempted to break through. The Galactic Conclave believed that humanity had accepted its punishment. They thought the dangerous little species had finally learned its place. They could not have been more wrong. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in caverns that had been carved out of solid rock, humanity was building a fleet. Not small ships designed to explore or trade. These were warships. Massive vessels created with one purpose in mind: revenge. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Hart served aboard the submarine carrier called Leviathan. It was one of 12 hidden ships that formed the core of Earth's secret military force. The surface world knew nothing about these vessels. They had been constructed in total secrecy, using workers who had volunteered to live underground for years, without contact with their families. Daniel floated in zero gravity inside a testing chamber as the ship prepared for another experiment. Around him, screens displayed information about the dimensional slip drive, the technology that would allow them to bypass the prison barrier by traveling through other dimensions instead of normal space. Dimensional slip drive test number 417, announced the computer voice. All crew members prepare for transition. The first few hundred tests had not worked. Some failures were small, just numbers that needed to be adjusted. Others were disasters. Two ships had simply vanished and never returned. One had come back with its crew aged 50 years in the span of 10 seconds. Everyone on board had died of old age before they could be rescued, but humans did not give up. They learned from every mistake. They honored the dead by continuing their work. The Leviathan began to shake as reality itself bent around the ship. Daniel felt something strange happening to his mind. For one brief moment, he existed in many places at the same time. He could feel himself here in the ship, but also somewhere else, somewhere that human language did not have words to describe. Then everything snapped back to normal. Transition complete, the computer reported. Current position is 14 light years from Earth. Total travel time was 0.03 seconds. Daniel looked at the view screen. Instead of the familiar stars near Earth, he saw completely different constellations. Tears began to run down his face, floating away in the zero-gravity dot. They had done it. After 5 years of work, 5 years of failure. After 5 years of failure, 5 years of death and sacrifice. They had found a way to escape the cage. The message reached Earth 3 days later through a chain of hidden communication satellites that the Conclave had never detected. The cage is broken. We are waiting for orders. President Mitchell read the message 3 times before he allowed himself to smile. Then he spoke 2 words that would change the history of the galaxy. Begin construction. The second phase of humanity's plan was the creation of a proper war fleet. The Leviathan and its sister ships had proven that the technology worked. Now they needed hundreds of vessels, maybe thousands, all equipped with the dimensional slip drive and armed with weapons that could challenge the Conclave. Dr. Lisa Morgan led the Weapons Research Division at a secret facility in Nevada. Her team had spent years studying every piece of alien technology they could find. They had bought some from smugglers. They had stolen some from diplomatic missions. They had reverse-engineered everything they could get their hands on. But more importantly, they had invented new things. Weapons that the Conclave had never imagined. The aliens use plasma weapons, Lisa explained during a secret meeting with military leaders. They have used the same basic technology for 300,000 years. Their shields are designed to stop plasma, stop missiles, stop everything they have ever encountered. In their long history, she pressed a button and a hologram appeared showing a device that looked like a simple metal tube with crystals at one end. This is what we call the nullifier. It does not shoot energy or bullets. It creates a field that temporarily stops the laws of physics from working properly. Inside this field, shields fail. Engines shut down. The bonds that hold atoms together become weak. A ship hit by this weapon will not explode. It will simply stop working. General Matthew Price studied the hologram carefully. He had spent his entire career preparing for wars that seemed impossible. Now the impossible had arrived. How soon can we make enough of these for the fleet? 2 years for versions that can be mounted on ships. 5 years for weapons that soldiers can carry. Make it faster, the general said. 1 year and 3. We cannot wait. While the military prepared for war, ordinary people prepared in their own ways. Schools added new classes about alien species and galactic history. Factories worked around the clock, producing everything from ship parts to food supplies. Young people lined up at recruitment centers, eager to join the fight. Sarah, the young woman from Chicago, who had changed her dreams from medicine to military service, graduated at the top of her pilot training class. She was assigned to a new ship called the Defiance, which was still being built in orbit around the moon. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old days, Sarah wrote in her journal. She said humans used to fight each other all the time. Wars over land, over religion, over stupid things that did not matter. She always hoped that we would find something better to fight for. She paused and looked out the window of the orbital station where she was stationed, watching construction drones assemble the hull of her future ship. Now we have something better. We are fighting for the right to be ourselves. We are fighting for the right to explore, to grow, to make our own choices. We are fighting for the right to be human. In the deepest levels of the Geneva Research Center, Dr. Catherine Ellis worked on the final calibrations of the dimensional slip drive that would be installed in the flagship of the new fleet. She had not seen sunlight in 3 years. She had missed the births of 2 nieces and the death of her father. But she did not regret her choices. "We are almost ready," she told Colonel Nathan Brooks during their final meeting before the first ships launched. "The drives are stable. The weapons are tested. The crews are trained. And you?" Nathan asked. "Are you ready?" Catherine thought about the question for a long moment. She remembered the day of the exile, the fear and anger she had felt watching those alien ships surround Earth. She remembered the long years of work, the failed experiments, the friends who had died along the way. "I have been ready since the day they built their cage around us," she said. "Now it is time to show them what happens when you try to cage humanity." The first fleet launched 3 weeks later. 50 ships slipped through the dimensional barriers and vanished from Earth's solar system, reappearing instantly at staging points scattered across nearby space. The silent years were over. The war was about to begin. 7 years after the exile began, humanity struck back. The United Earth Fleet appeared without warning in the Vexari star system. The Vexari were the species that had first reported humanity to the Galactic Conclave. They had complained about human ships exploring too close to their borders. They had demanded that Earth be punished. Now Earth had come to deliver a response. 53 human warships hung in the darkness of space, their hulls painted black and marked with the blue symbol of the United Earth military. They were smaller than the Vexari vessels, sleeker and more elegant in design. The aliens who saw them did not know whether to laugh or run. Captain Amanda Cole commanded the flagship Defiance from its central control room. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing the positions of every ship in the system. The Vexari had 240 defensive vessels protecting their homeworld. They had not fought a real battle in over 10,000 years. But their fleet was still impressive. Amanda opened a communication channel that would be heard by every ship in the system. "This is Captain Cole of the United Earth Fleet speaking to Vexari Defense Command. You have 1 hour to evacuate all military personnel from your orbital stations. We have no quarrel with your civilian population. We will not attack your planet. But every military target in this system will be destroyed." The Vexari response came quickly. 300 plasma cannons opened fire on the Defiance at the same time. The combined energy of the attack could have melted a small moon into liquid rock. The shields on the Defiance glowed bright blue as they absorbed the assault. Inside the ship, Amanda did not even feel a vibration. "Their weapons cannot hurt us," reported her tactical officer, a young man named Kevin from Texas who had joined the military the day after the exile. "Our shields are holding at 98%. Amanda nodded slowly. She had hoped the Vexari would be smart enough to surrender. She had hoped to avoid any fighting at all. But some lessons had to be learned the hard way. "They had their chance," she said. "Open fire." The nullifier batteries on all 53 human ships activated at the same moment. Invisible fields of disrupted physics spread across the Vexari formation like waves on an ocean. Alien ships went dark as their power cores failed. Shields flickered and vanished. Weapon systems locked up and refused to fire. In 14 minutes. The entire Vexari defense fleet was reduced to drifting metal boxes. Not a single alien ship was destroyed. Not a single alien life was lost. But every vessel was completely helpless. Human boarding teams swept through the disabled ships with calm efficiency. They secured the crews, provided medical care to the injured, and gathered the aliens into escape pods pointed toward their homeworld. Before leaving, Amanda recorded a message that was broadcast to every communication device in the Vexery system. Humanity does not forget those who imprisoned us. We do not forgive those who tried to cage our curiosity. But we are not monsters. We will not kill helpless enemies, even though you would have killed us without a second thought. Consider this a warning. The next time we meet, we may not be so merciful. The message spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Within days, every species in the Conclave knew what had happened. Humanity had broken free. Humanity had weapons that made the Conclave's technology look like children's toys. And humanity was angry. Panic swept through the alien governments. Emergency meetings were called. Military leaders demanded immediate action. Politicians argued about what to do. No one could agree on anything except that something had gone terribly wrong. While the Conclave argued, humanity moved. Admiral Grace Sullivan led the Second Earth Fleet to a region of space far from any Conclave territory. She was looking for allies, and she knew exactly where to find them. The Karathi were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Their civilization had existed long before the Conclave was formed. They had retreated from galactic politics thousands of years ago, tired of the endless corruption and power struggles. But they had quietly opposed humanity's exile. They had voted against it, even though their vote did not matter. Grace's fleet arrived at the edge of Karathi space and waited. She did not advance further. She did not send threatening messages. She simply waited, as a guest would wait to be invited into someone's home. 3 days later, a Karathi ship appeared. It was unlike anything human engineers had ever designed. A vessel that seemed to be made of pure light shaped into geometric patterns. "We have been watching you," said a voice that appeared directly in Grace's mind. The Karathi did not speak with sounds. They communicated through thoughts. "We saw your victory at Vexery. We were impressed." "We did not come to impress you," Grace replied, thinking her words carefully so the alien could understand. "We came to ask for your help." "Help with what?" "You have clearly shown that you do not need military assistance. We need information. We need to understand the Conclave's weaknesses. We need to know which species might join us and which will fight against us. Most importantly, we need to know how to end this war without destroying everything." The Karathi was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried a weight of ancient wisdom. "You have done something that many believed impossible. You have shaken the foundations of an empire that has stood for 500,000 years. But you must understand what this means. The Conclave cannot negotiate with you. They cannot admit that you have won, even partially. To do so would destroy the illusion of power that holds their empire together. So they will keep fighting. They will come for you with everything they have. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier from every species that owes them loyalty. They will try to destroy Earth itself." Grace had expected this answer. She had prepared for it. But hearing it spoken so plainly still sent a chill down her spine. "Let them come," she said finally. "We will be ready." The Karathi ship pulsed with light, and Grace felt something like approval flowing through her thoughts. "We cannot fight beside you openly. Our people have chosen peace, and we will not break that choice. But we can provide you with knowledge. We can tell you things about the Conclave that they have tried to hide for centuries. Use this information wisely, human. The fate of the galaxy may depend on what you do next." Over the following weeks, the Karathi shared everything they knew. They revealed the locations of secret Conclave bases. They explained the political divisions between different member species. They described weaknesses in Conclave technology that had never been exploited. Armed with this knowledge, Humanity began preparing for the battle that would decide everything. The Conclave was gathering its forces. The largest fleet in galactic history was being assembled, and its target was Earth. The first strike had been successful beyond anyone's hopes. But the real war was just beginning. The Galactic Conclave assembled the largest fleet in the history of the universe. 40,000 warships from 60 different species gathered at the edge of human space. It was a force so massive that it blocked out the light of distant stars. Nothing like it had been seen in 100,000 years. The Arbiter, the supreme leader of the Conclave, gave the order to lower the barrier around Earth's solar system. It was a gesture of contempt. The cage was no longer necessary, because humanity was about to be wiped from existence. Commander Christopher Lake stood on the surface of Mars, watching the enemy approach through the display built into his helmet. He was one of 10 million human soldiers positioned throughout the solar system. They manned defense platforms hidden in asteroid fields, bases buried beneath the surfaces of moons, and stations floating in the darkness between planets. "They think we are desperate," he said to his squad through their private communication channel. "They think we fought back because we were afraid, like a trapped animal biting at its cage. They have no idea what humans are really capable of." The first shots of the battle were fired at the edge of the asteroid belt. Hidden weapons platforms that had been disguised as ordinary rocks suddenly came to life. Nullifier beams swept across the leading edge of the Conclave fleet. 1,200 alien ships went dark in the opening moments of the fight, their crews helpless as human boarding teams moved in to capture them. But 40,000 ships was a number that could absorb losses. The Conclave commanders had expected to lose vessels. They had planned for it. The fleet pushed forward like a giant wave rolling toward a beach, accepting casualties that would have broken any other civilization. Admiral Marcus Flynn commanded the human defense fleet from the Bridge of the Unconquerable, the largest warship humanity had ever built. It was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and protected by shields that could withstand a direct hit from a nuclear explosion. "All ships, execute Pattern Delta," Marcus ordered calmly. "Draw them deeper into the system. Make them pay for every kilometer." The human fleet was outnumbered 40 to 1. In any normal battle, those odds would mean certain defeat. But this was not a normal battle. The humans had spent 7 years preparing for exactly this moment. Dr. Catherine Ellis watched the battle from her command center beneath the mountains of Switzerland. The technology she had helped create was being used in ways she had never imagined. Tiny drones no larger than a basketball appeared throughout the enemy formation using dimensional slip drives. They delivered precise attacks against critical systems, destroyed communication arrays, disabled engine controls, then vanished before anyone could react. "Report from the 3rd Fleet," her assistant announced. 7 ships lost, 43 damaged. Catherine closed her eyes for a moment. 7 ships meant about 3,000 human lives. Each one was a tragedy. Each death was a debt that would be repaid. "Send a signal to Admiral Chun," she said. "Tell him to begin the final phase." Deep in the heart of the sun, something began to wake up. For 3 years, humans had been secretly building a device at the center of their own star. It was the most ambitious engineering project in history, constructed by robots that could survive temperatures that would vaporize any normal material. The device activated, and the sun itself became a weapon. A beam of directed stellar plasma shot outward, guided by gravity manipulation technology that the Conclave had never even imagined was possible. The beam was not powerful enough to destroy 40,000 ships. It was not meant to be. Instead, it was designed to blind sensors, disrupt communications, and force the enemy fleet to scatter and panic. Into that chaos, the full strength of Earth's home defense force appeared. 300 human, Warships materialized throughout the confused enemy formation. They struck with precision and fury, targeting command ships and communication vessels. The Conclave fleet, which had been moving with perfect coordination just moments before, suddenly became a disorganized mob of individual ships with no clear orders. Captain Amanda Cole led a squadron of fast attack vessels through the heart of the enemy formation. Her ship, the Defiance, had been upgraded since the Battle of Vexery. It was faster now, more powerful, and equipped with the latest weapons. "Target the flagship," she ordered. "The Arbiter is on that ship. If we capture it, we end this war." The Conclave flagship was enormous, a vessel so large that it could have contained a small city. It was covered with weapons, protected by the strongest shields the aliens had ever created. Around it, hundreds of escort ships formed a defensive wall. Amanda did not hesitate. She pushed her squadron forward at maximum speed, trusting her ship's superior technology to protect them. Plasma bolts and missile swarms filled space around her, but her shields held. The nullifier beams from her squadron carved holes in the enemy defense, disabling ships without destroying them. They broke through. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe was among the first humans to set foot on the Conclave flagship. She led her squad through corridors that had never seen combat. The aliens they encountered surrendered quickly, shocked that anyone had managed to board their sacred vessel. The Arbiter's throne room was at the center of the ship. It was a vast chamber filled with floating platforms where the 17 members of the Conclave Council sat in judgment over the galaxy. When Rachel and her soldiers burst through the doors, those ancient beings looked up with expressions of pure disbelief. "This is impossible," the Arbiter said. His voice was mechanical, translated by computers into human language. "We are the Conclave. We have ruled for 500,000 years. You cannot defeat us." "And yet, here we stand," Rachel replied, keeping her weapon trained on the alien leader. "In 7 years, we built a fleet that crushed yours. In 7 years, we developed weapons that made your technology obsolete. In 7 years, we proved that your empire is built on nothing but fear and lies." She stepped forward and activated a broadcast system that would send her next words to every corner of the galaxy. Every species in the Conclave would hear this. Every planet, every ship, every being would know what had happened. "This is Lieutenant Rachel Monroe of the United Earth Fleet. The Galactic Conclave has been defeated. Their fleet is scattered or captured. Their leadership is in our custody. The old order is finished." Around her, the members of the council sat in stunned silence. For 500,000 years, they had ruled without challenge. They had believed their power was eternal, their authority absolute. They had never imagined that a young species from an unremarkable planet could bring everything crashing down, back on the bridge of the unconquerable. Admiral Marcus Flynn received confirmation that the flagship had been captured. Around him, his crew erupted in cheers. Through the view screen, he could see the remains of the once mighty Conclave Armada drifting helplessly through space. "Send the message to Earth," he ordered, his voice thick with emotion. "Tell them the battle is over. Tell them we won." On the surface of Earth, billions of people looked up at the sky. They had watched the battle through live feeds, holding their breath as the fate of their species hung in the balance. Now, as the news of victory spread, celebrations erupted across every continent. In Chicago, Sarah stood on the roof of her old apartment building, tears streaming down her face. She had survived the battle. She had fought in her ship until the enemy retreated. And now, for the first time since the exile began, she felt truly free. The cage was broken. The jailers were defeated. And humanity had proven something that the galaxy would never forget. You do not cage humans. You do not tell them what they cannot do. Because when you try to limit them, they will fight back. And they will win. The aftermath of the Battle of Earth changed the galaxy forever. The Galactic Conclave, which had ruled 10,000 star systems for 500,000 years, was dissolved. Its member species were left to decide their own futures for the first time in recorded history. Some adapted quickly. Others struggled. And a few refused to accept that the old ways were gone. The 17 members of the Conclave Council were tried for their crimes against humanity. They were not executed, though many humans demanded their deaths. Instead, they were imprisoned on a remote planet, forced to spend the rest of their long lives watching the galaxy they once controlled move forward without them. President Howard Mitchell, now serving his 4th term under emergency rules, addressed the United Nations on the 10th anniversary of the exile. His hair was completely white now, and his face showed the weight of the decisions he had made. But his voice was still strong. "We did not ask for the responsibility that has fallen on us," he said. "We did not want to become the leaders of galactic civilization. But when we were caged, we broke free. When we were attacked, we defended ourselves. And now, when the galaxy looks to us for guidance, we cannot turn away." The transition was not smooth. Without the conclave to maintain order, old conflicts between species began to resurface. Wars broke out in a dozen star systems. Planets that had lived in peace for thousands of years suddenly found themselves fighting neighbors they had once called friends. Humanity found itself drawn into these conflicts, whether it wanted to be or not. Human peacekeeping forces were deployed across the galaxy, trying to stop the violence from spreading. Human diplomats worked endless hours negotiating ceasefires and peace treaties. Human ships delivered food and medicine to worlds devastated by the chaos. It was exhausting work, and it seemed like it would never end. Admiral Grace Sullivan had retired after the Battle of Earth, but she was still called upon for advice. She lived in a small house in San Francisco now, with a view of the bay and the stars beyond. Her granddaughter Emma visited often, full of questions about the war and what came after. "We proved them wrong," Grace told Emma one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "The conclave said we were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too human. And they were right about that last part. We are human. That means we fight when someone pushes us. We build when someone challenges us. We reach for the impossible when someone tells us it cannot be done." "But what happens now?" Emma asked. She was 12 years old, born after the exile began. She had never known a world where humans were caged. "Now that we won, what do we do?" Grace smiled and looked up at the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. "Now we do what humans have always done. We explore. We learn. We grow. Not because anyone gives us permission, but because that is who we are." In shipyards orbiting Earth and Mars and a dozen moons throughout the solar system, a new generation of vessels was being constructed. These were not warships, though they could defend themselves if necessary. They were explorer vessels, designed to travel into the vast unknown regions of the galaxy that even the Conclave had never mapped. Captain Amanda Cole, promoted to admiral after her victory at the Battle of Earth, had stepped down from command of military forces. She had spent 7 years fighting, and she was tired of war. But she was not ready to retire. She had a new mission now. The explorer ship Endeavor was the first of its kind. It was beautiful, a vessel designed for discovery rather than destruction. Its crew represented every nation on Earth, selected from millions of volunteers who had competed for the honor of venturing into the unknown. Amanda stood on the bridge as the ship prepared for its first voyage. Around her, officers checked systems and confirmed that everything was ready. Through the view screen, she could see Earth hanging in space, the planet that had given birth to humanity and sent it out to change the galaxy. "The Conclave tried to contain us," she said to her crew. "They feared what we might become if given the freedom to grow. For 500,000 years, they kept other species small and controlled, afraid of what might happen if anyone challenged their rule. They forgot something important. She paused, looking at the faces of her crew. They were young, most of them, born during or after the exile. They had grown up hearing stories about the war, about the sacrifices made by the generation before them. Now it was their turn to write new stories. They forgot that you cannot stop life from growing. You cannot stop minds from wondering. You cannot stop hearts from hoping. They tried to cage us, and we broke free. They tried to destroy us, and we defeated them. Now the galaxy is open, and there is no one left to tell us where we cannot go. The dimensional slip drive hummed as it powered up. The familiar stars around Earth began to shift and blur as reality prepared to bend around the ship. On Earth, billions of people watched the Endeavor prepare to depart. Schools had declared a holiday so children could witness the moment. Families gathered around screens, just as they had gathered to watch the Battle of Earth a decade before. But this time, there was no fear. Only hope. Dr. Catherine Ellis watched from her laboratory, still working, even now, on new technologies that would make the next generation of ships faster and more capable. She was older now, her hair gray and her hands not as steady as they once were. But she smiled as the Endeavor began to fade from view. "Go find something wonderful," she whispered. In Chicago, Sarah stood on the same rooftop where she had celebrated the victory years before. She was a commander now, responsible for training the next generation of pilots. Her own days of flying into battle were behind her, but her work would send thousands of young people out into the stars. "We used to be prisoners," she said to the young pilots gathered around her. "We used to be trapped in our own solar system, told that we were not allowed to explore, not allowed to grow, not allowed to be ourselves. Look at us now." The Endeavor vanished in a flash of light, jumping across dimensions to appear instantly in a distant corner of the galaxy. It was the first of many such ships, the beginning of a new era of human exploration. Behind it, Earth shone bright and blue against the darkness of space. It was still home, still the place where humanity had begun. But it was no longer a cage. It was a starting point, a foundation from which humans would spread out to every corner of the universe. The Conclave had tried to stop them. They had failed. Other challenges would come. Other enemies would rise. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers that humanity had not yet imagined. But whatever came next, humans would face it the same way they had faced the exile, with courage, with determination, with the absolute refusal to accept any limit on what they could become. The stars belonged to everyone now, and humanity was just getting started.